Hey guys, it's Maria. Welcome back to my channel. I post videos every single Thursday giving you guys the best tips and tools for being more effective in your practice sessions and helping you achieve your musical goals. So if you're new, consider subscribing. This week we're talking about memorization hacks part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, it will be linked up here. Go watch that first. As you guys know, a lot of my practice vlogs are me memorizing my pieces, and as I mentioned in my previous video, they don't just magically get memorized on their own. So I've developed quite a list of techniques to help me memorize quickly and effectively, so that's what I'm sharing with you guys today. But before we get into the video, make sure to download my memorization checklist in the description box and stick around till the end of the video for a little demo of how I use these memorization hacks in a real piece I'm working on right now. Let's get into the video. So tip number 1 is say your keywords out loud. If you guys have been following my practice vlogs, you know that I always make sure to write my keywords in green. Not sure why I chose that color, but the main thing is I make sure to always say them out loud. It's one thing to know your keywords, but it's another to test yourself and see if you can say all the keywords for one page, for example, without looking at it. This works especially well for those mental blocks that we all have when we're memorizing, when you just cannot memorize this one part. Try to say the keywords out loud for it without playing, and more often than not, your problem will be solved. Tip number 2 is learning your left hand first. In my previous video, I talked about learning from the end of the piece, so you always go into a section you already learned. This is similar in that you're learning the harder hand first, that is if you're right-handed like me, and when you end up putting the right hand together with the left, you're putting a part together that you already have the base for. Fun fact, most memory slips happen in the left hand, not only because it's the non-dominant hand, but because it rarely has melodic material and it can be very repetitive. So learning your left hand first, although it's tricky, will save you a lot of memory slips and will give you a better understanding of the piece as a whole. And as a bonus, the left hand often has some pretty cool voices and harmonies that you might not have noticed otherwise, so by doing this step, you could get some extra musicality points as well. Tip number 3 is playing different voices and different combinations of voices. This is building on learning the left hand first and is easiest to explain using the example of a fugue. A fugue usually has 2 to 5 different voices, and by memorizing one voice at a time, then combinations of 2 voices and 3 voices, you help avoid future memory slips and gain a better understanding of the piece as a whole. I learned this tip from Dr. Sasha Starcevich in his video where he explains how he gets his students to memorize their pieces, and I will link that down below if you guys want to check it out. Tip number 4 is mental practice. This is for when you're waiting for the bus, you're bored, or you don't have your piano with you, which is anytime you're not home or at the conservatory. If you try this before bed, it will knock you out. So much better than counting sheep. What you want to do is visualize yourself pressing the exact keys that you would when you're playing the piece. And what's really cool is the exact same places that you would blank out on when you're visualizing are usually the same places you would blank out on when you're actually playing. So if you want that extra security in your piece, don't skip the step. And the 5th and final step is to set aside time to review yesterday's work. This is a super important step, and I neglected to do this until very recently. This all comes down to planning. Let's say you have a 60-page piece that you want to memorize in 30 days, so you set aside time to memorize 2 pages a day for 30 days. That's not enough. What you actually need to plan for is memorizing 2 pages on the first day, but on the second day you're going to memorize 2 pages and review 2 pages, and on the third day you're going to memorize 2 pages and review 4 pages. So the farther along you get in your memorization, the more time you have to set aside to review yesterday's work, because it is so annoying to have to rememorize the same things you already memorized a few days or weeks ago just because you didn't set aside time to review them. Now let's go to the piano so I can show you guys these tips in action. Let's go. So here we are at the piano, and I'm just going to show you how I use these tips using Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto, second movement as an example. So here we are on page 57, and I'm going to use big number 27 as my starting point. And I'm actually going to use 2 of the tips at the same time. I'm going to say my keywords out loud and learn the left hand first. So for this section, my keywords are E major, G sharp minor, because it's a G sharp minor chord. My keyword for the third chord is more based on what it looks like and feels like in the hand more than what the actual chord is, and my keyword here is whole because there's a big gap between the second finger and the first finger in the chord. My next chord is a little bit oversimplified. I say A minor and F sharp because there's an A minor chord and an F sharp. Of course I could say F sharp half diminished chord, but that's a little bit too complicated for me, and I'm not going to remember it as easily as A minor plus F sharp when I'm trying to memorize the whole piece. Usually I would take about half a page to memorize at a time and to say the keywords out loud for, but just to keep this video short and concise for you guys, I'm going to use 2 bars at a time, and I'm just going to say the keywords out loud. So my keywords for this section are E major, G sharp minor, whole, and A minor plus F sharp. So let's try playing that. So we just covered the first 2 tips, which is saying your keywords out loud and learning your left hand first. So with that, remembering that I like to work backwards, let's flip the page to page 57 and do the next tip. So my third tip is playing different voices and different combinations of voices. If we take a look at what we have here, we have one top voice in the right hand. We also have the middle voice in the right hand. And in the left hand, we have 2 voices. So if we want to play the bottom 2 voices, that's the same thing as just playing the left hand. But if we want to add another voice to it, then we can play the left hand and a voice in the right hand. And I would memorize that first before putting it all together. So the next tip is visualizing yourself, and there's not much I can demonstrate here because it's all inside your head, but I can just remind you to not miss a single note. So if I was visualizing this, I would visualize it. And if I miss a note, I want to start again or remember that note, because you really want to be hard on yourself in this step so you prevent any further memory slips. And for the last tip, I'm going to show you guys how I planned to memorize the second movement, which is 21 pages long, and I gave myself 2 weeks to memorize it. So let me draw you what my plan looked like. This is my layout for how I plan to memorize 21 pages in 2 weeks, memorizing roughly 2 pages a day with some breathing room. I'm just writing in page by page what I have to memorize each day, and actually writing it out like this helps me stay accountable. Next, I'm writing out the pages I have to review. Notice that I'm not only reviewing yesterday's work each day, but the day before that as well. And the last few days I leave empty just in case something goes wrong or takes longer, so I can still get the piece memorized on time and not worry about being late. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what tip you liked the most. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!